Alright, so today I'm back with another Blue Lock leak video, and today we will go over chapter 299. And today it's honestly insane as we see like 3 players cry their eyes out, and not to mention that Ego isn't holding back his words at all, and goes in. But I don't want to say too much, so you will just have to sit back and watch to find out what happens. Anyway, before jumping into it, please leave a like and a comment as well as join the Discord server. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Also, if you want to check out the leaks for yourself, then I will put a link down in the comments where you can look at them. Alright, so this chapter, also called Blue Tears, starts off with the text saying, "With Spain's victory, the last place is confirmed. The future of Nagi and Rio is separated." We also see FC Barca celebrating. Meanwhile, we see Rio looking absolutely destroyed and crushed. We then get to Nanasi, who even he himself is surprised that he made it, and he starts to cry, which is completely understandable. Even though I don't like him, it must have been such a relief for him to see his name on the board. We also see Raichi, who's ecstatic and screams. Meanwhile, both Zantetsu and Kiora do a kind of silent celebrating to themselves. Now the last panel broke me as Tokimitsu saw his place on the board, which was at the 25th place, and he first couldn't believe it before he started to cry uncontrollably. I know that Tokimitsu has gotten barely any screen time, but he has always been such a sunshine in the series, and seeing him crying was actually so sad. We also see the defenders from the U20 team being mad that they didn't make it. However, that's far from all, as we also see Igarashi, who got a 3 million offer, shared with the GOAT Nishioka. Anyway, as he sees his name, he also understandably starts to cry, as he knows that it's back to the temple where he goes. Anyway, we then get to the main man, and the GOAT, Ego, who says that this concludes the final salary auction announcement. Those who didn't make it in the top 23 are no longer needed in Blue Lock, so he tells them to lock off, which actually sounds insanely cool. But we then see Ego looking intense towards them, and a gate called Loser's Gate starts opening for them to walk out of. However, it's not over yet, as Isagi starts to pipe up, and he tells Ego to wait and asks him why Nagi didn't make it. Ego then starts to look intense as he says that he couldn't contribute to the match, saying that he had some shiny moments, but the disparity between good and bad was too big, and that a player of this quality gets a relative salary, and he coldly says that there is all to it. However, Isagi isn't done just yet as he starts talking about Nagi's talents. But just then, Rio appears on the big screen, and he asks Ego to please redo it, saying that it's weird and that there's no way that this is happening. Rio looks super intense, and he looks genuinely mad. Isagi, watching this, just says his name. We then get back to Rio, who's standing beside Nagi, who sits on the ground. Rio says that Nagi's talent is recognized in the world, and that he isn't always at his best, but there are miracle plays only Nagi can do. Nagi looks extremely sad as he is listening in. Meanwhile, Rio starts to get angry and screams towards Ego that Nagi is certainly a genius, and that he's too good for it to just end like this. And once again, he asks for Ego to do the calculations once more. Ego, however, has an insane amount of aura, and asks Rio to shut his mouth. He says that this isn't a daycare and calls him a peace-seeking idiot. Ego tells him that in the beginning, he said that this is a laboratory to make the world's best. Rio is just too stunned to even say anything, and he can't even get out any proper words. Ego then continues and asks him if he just called Nagi a genius. Ego then follows that up and says that Rio must be joking, and that it's clear that with this outcome right now, Nagi's talent has already withered away. And trust me, Ego looks so insanely cool as he straight up says that towards Rio, like his aura is all over the place. Rio, who can't believe his ears, just says, "What?" Hey, it's Natsu mid-editing here, and I just wanted to pause the video to ask you to subscribe if you haven't already, and while you are already down there, why not leave a like as well? Ego then goes deeper and explains that talent isn't about believing in one's abilities, and that it's about proving one's abilities that come before, saying that it's why talent is changing, affected by the environment and mental friends and rivals, goals, and feelings that can amplify or stifle one's talent. Ego says that sometimes it leads to results beyond talent, and that Nagi's fake volley in the third match was just that, explaining that in that moment he unexpectedly proved he's more than his talent. After that, he created the illusion that this was his true power, and that's what the world came to expect from Nagi. He tells them that what they should have done was discipline themselves and admit these results were more than talent. But the biggest crime was that with this goal, Nagi fulfilled his dream of winning against Isagi. Ego then does the typical anime villain thing and puts his glasses up as he asks them what the biggest reason a talent withers away is. Is it loss of hope, despair, or even fear? However, it's none of them, as it's satisfaction. Explaining that in truth, he didn't have the strength to win against Isagi, and that Nagi won by a fluke, with desires freed, A beast with a full stomach forgets how to hunt, telling them all that the fire won't come back, and that at this point in the match, he should have overcome it by himself, even if it's painful. And even if he lost, he should have kept burning that insatiable ego, and finally dropping the bomb by saying that the choice by them to team up killed Nagi's talent, explaining that by then it had already withered. He tells Ryo that he was probably hoping that this talent, which can never bloom again, would flourish and kept watering it. As Ego says that, we also see Ryo, who thinks back to some of their moments together, and he starts to get emotional, and he starts to cry out of sadness. However, Ego keeps on doubling down and says that in the end, Nagi only talked about being the best, but couldn't find a bigger fire than winning against Isagi. Ryo can't keep hearing all of these harsh words, and he asks Ego to stop. However, Ego continues and tells Nagi that he was probably satisfied, and that it's why he got scared of losing what surrounds him right now. Ryo once again just wants all of this to stop, and asks him to please stop. However, Ego tells him to shut up, and that this is Blue Lock. He looks intensely, even so much that his veins start to pop out, as he says that only crazy dreamers who won't stop until they reach the world's top belong here, telling them that if you are a sensible man satisfied with anything below that, then Nagi should just go home. We then get back to both Ryo and Nagi, and Ryo is still crying uncontrollably, but Nagi then says Ryo's name and is about to say something. However, we leave off at a cliffhanger there with the text saying that our unfulfilled dream in the midst, Nagi speaks to Ryo. However, to give you guys some good news, there's no break next week, which feels so insanely good as we only have to wait one more week to know what Nagi is about to say. Also, the title for the next chapter is Innocent, which I'm not too sure on what it could mean, and I for real have no idea, so I can't even speculate about it. Anyway, with that, I do want to go over this insane chapter really quick. Now, firstly, as sad as this chapter is, we have to give credit to FC Barca, who actually got their first win of the Neo Egoist League, and even though we are sad over Nagi and Ryo, they deserve some credit for it. Now I have to talk about Tokimitsu and Igarashi. Now I've always cared a bit for Tokimitsu. However, I've always had a burning hatred for Igarashi, and even though I still have it, just seeing him crying towards the screen was so sad. However, I know that I said early that he was going back to the temple. However, he actually did get a bid, so he probably might be able to play for some sort of club, even though his offer was a 3 million offer. And Tokimitsu, I just don't know what to say about him. Don't get me wrong, his performance in the PXG game sucked. However, seeing him crying crushes me. However, like Igarashi, he did get an offer, and now at 22 million, so he will probably also go over and play for that team. But just having to part ways with the Blue Lock players must be tough. Now there isn't really much to say about Nagi and Ryo. However, I want to highlight when Ego said that Nagi created the illusion from his stage volley, and that set the expectations from him way too high. And that's why his decrease in salary was so insanely drastic. Because even though he has some of the most insane goals in the series, I think that the stage volley is the best goal in the whole Neo Egoist League. However, if you can't replicate it, then what are you really worth? And I've always thought that this wouldn't be the end for him. However, with this chapter, I'm starting to doubt it even more and more, because it feels like it would be a good way to part ways. And then with Nagi going to speak towards Ryo in the next chapter, it definitely leaves me interested in hearing what he will say to him. Anyway, not going to take up too much time of your day, but just be sure to let me know in the comments what you thought about this chapter, if you liked it or not. If you like Blue Lock and videos like this, then I would highly suggest you subscribe to this channel, and while you are at it, leave a comment and a like, as it helps out with the algorithm a ton. And if you are curious to see another video of mine, then please watch the video that will be popping up on the screen now. Anyway, thanks for watching, and have a great day. Bye.